Getting the learner to initially generate solutions, even if they don't get them right, actually prepares them to deeply understand the correct solution when it's taught later.
As vozes do professor.
أصوات المعلمون.
老師有話兒.
Teachers' voices.
Welcome to a new episode of Teachers' Voices, the podcast made of the stories of teachers around the world talking in their own words. I'm your host, Nina Alonso, and for the past 4 years, I have been gathering insights from researchers and experiences from teachers to understand how to help children learn and thrive. Today, we are exploring how deep learning happens. Our expert guest, Manu Kapur, explains why learning does not always have to be easy. Manu is director of the Singapore ETH Center and professor for learning sciences and higher education at ETH Zurich, Switzerland, where he also directs the Future Learning Initiative. We also hear from two primary school teachers, Katharine Young in Spain and Tojin Awofeso from Rwanda. Both are interested in how to guide students' learning while giving them autonomy and freedom to face changes and explore problems without much adult intervention. Let's first meet Manu Kapur. Manu has been traveling to promote his new book called Productive Failure. Today, I find him in Southeast Asia. Thanks so much for accepting my invitation. How are you?
Hi, Nina. Good to be here. I'm doing very well. Thank you. How about you?
I'm great, thanks. I'm talking to you from the south of Spain.
I'm currently in Singapore.
So it must be afternoon for you. How is the weather like there now?
Warm and humid is the weather.
I hear joyful sounds of children playing around. Do I?
Oh, that's my son. He's he's 4. I wish I could do something about that.
I love the sound of children playing. Manu, before you tell us about the science behind why learning should not always be easy, I know you have experience as a school teacher. So could you tell us how you decided to start researching this topic?
Before I went into academia, I was teaching grade 12 students mathematics in Singapore. And one of the things I realized when I was teaching, that even if I could explain things very clearly, students could do what I showed them. If you change the problem a little bit, you probe them for understanding, I found that the understanding was quite shallow. And that was the starting point of my thinking as to why that happens. And then part of my research is really trying to figure out why that happens and what we can do about it.
So what does the science say about how deep learning happens?
We know that when we try to learn something new, by definition, we are entering a zone where our current knowledge and skill sets are not quite there yet. It's really when I give you a task and you struggle to do it correctly. It's really then that you try to enter a zone where you know the limits of your own knowledge and skills, and then you take on a challenge or a task that is beyond that. That's where learning really happens, is in that zone which is beyond your current skill sets and abilities. The idea as a teacher and also as a researcher is to design the tasks in that zone of failure, what I call, right? You design tasks which you might be able to generate multiple ideas and solutions, but because you don't have the knowledge to solve that problem correctly, you will not be able to get to the correct solution. That exploration is very important because it prepares you to then learn from the expert or the correct instruction later on. And together, that's how you take the initial failure and you make it productive.
That is interesting. And is that what you call productive failure?
Productive failure is basically the idea that if you want to teach somebody something new, or if you want to learn yourself something new, it's best not to teach it or tell it or explain it initially. The idea is that initially you should first prepare the learner to see things and then show them what is the correct thing.
And how can teaching incorporate the notion of productive failure?
So productive failure is a 2-phase design. In the first phase, we engage learners in problem-solving activities that are specifically designed for them to generate multiple solutions. None of those solutions are going to be correct. The problems are designed for failure. So students try something and it doesn't work. And they try something else, it doesn't work. Or it doesn't work fully. They do 3, 4, 5 of such attempts. And that's when they will have activated enough prior and relevant knowledge that prepares them for the instruction from the teacher, who can then come in the second phase and say, oh, you've tried so many different ways. Here's what's working, not working about these strategies. Here's the correct way of solving these problems. And by comparing and contrasting, you can try to understand why your solutions did not work and why does the correct solution work. And that's what leads to deep understanding abilities. So together, the two-phase model is the productive failure model.
How can we make sure failure does not create insecurity or anxiety in the students?
How we approach failure depends on how we frame it. So if I ask students, hey, here's a problem, challenging problem, you have not learned the concepts, and I expect you to be able to solve it, creates a lot of anxiety and frustration because the expectation is you have to solve it correctly. And that is the default expectation that most people come into classrooms with. Whereas in productive failure, it's not just the design of the problems and the activities, but also the teacher has to set the right expectations and norms. So when a child enters into that space and says, it's okay if I don't get them right, then that lowers the anxiety levels. And instead, the child starts to focus on, let me just try different things.
So teachers need to convey their expectations in a way that makes the students feel comfortable, right?
Teachers have to work hard to maintain that set of expectations because oftentimes children, they fall back into the default one. Oh, I'm not getting it right. So you have to keep reminding them that it's the effort to generate even incorrect ideas or solutions is what is required and not worry about the correct one.
How do you do this in a classroom?
Part of my work has been to articulate a set of design principles. There are sets of principles that support teachers implementing this and facilitating productive failure in the classroom. The biggest sort of envelope is that all of this takes place in a psychologically safe space.
How would a teacher design a task?
Designing for productive failure is basically designing at three levels: the tasks, the facilitation, and then this overall classroom culture, the safe culture within which people can participate in that.
How can teachers set the right expectations and norms?
When they start, they have to say, you will be engaged in activities where you will struggle a little because they are beyond your current knowledge. The goal of this is for you to generate ideas and not worry about getting it right. So that's exactly an explicit renegotiation of the didactic contract, right? That needs to be actually discussed and not assumed. We will tell students that instead of teaching you first, I'm going to give you challenging activities. Design in a way that you will be able to generate multiple ideas, but none of them will completely solve the problem. But don't worry about getting it right or wrong. That is not the goal. The goal is that you try many different approaches. So teacher actually has to say these things and then support students in that process.
And what are the principles they should take into account?
When you design the task, one principle is that the task should use very intuitive language, not formal technical language. The task should also admit multiple solutions. The task should use contrasts, so get students to deal with multiple cases, compare and contrast cases. So those are just examples of how you design the task, how you set the right expectations, and so on.
That is really useful. Thank you very much, Manu. Now let's hear how teachers help their students learn deeply. Katharine Young, a primary school teacher, welcomes us in Spain. Hello, Katharine.
Hello, how are you, Nina?
I'm good. Thanks for being here with us today.
My pleasure. I'm looking forward to talking to you.
I'm recording also from Spain, but I think you are more towards the north, right?
I'm based in Pamplona in Spain. I'm sitting in my house at the moment because it's the weekend, enjoying the weather. The sun has just come out.
In your experience, what methods produce deep learning?
For learning to happen now, we have to present meaningful learning situations. I think the key has to be to put the students in a situation whereby they want to take on the challenge of learning, whereby they actually want to learn. I think historically, perhaps, classes have been much more teacher-based, teachers giving information.
What kind of approach do you follow in the classroom to engage students?
I would start actually by just asking them what they already know about a particular subject. What do they want to learn about that subject? From there, if you can form different groups of different interests, if students are working on something that they're really interested in and they want to find more about, then you're starting from a good point. And then I think it's the idea of giving them the freedom to do their own investigation. So I'm not telling you, you're actually investigating and telling me. So in my experience, that has made them into active learners rather than passive learners.
Can you share an example?
A lot of the work that I do in the classroom has been project-based. For me, the key is you give them a problem and they have to solve it. And perhaps you need to give them an incentive to want to solve that problem. In the projects that we've done at school, there may be clues that lead to more information. They can't get the information until they've completed the investigation that they need to do and found the answers in order to get the next clue, for example. We did a very big project which was about sustainability, but it actually incorporated a lot of other subjects in it. One of the things that the kids had to do was actually remodel the whole city. They had to decide how they were going to govern it, choose what sort of government they would by studying the different types of government throughout history, really. What type of energy would they be choosing? You know, whether that be renewable, fossil fuels, they had to investigate it. And one of the things at the end of the project that they had to do, which they absolutely loved, was to make a model of the new city. And obviously there was no electricity, so they had to create the electrical circuit in order to give the city the power that it needed. And for them, this was a big challenge because they learnt by doing. They got very frustrated because sometimes when their circuits didn't work, they would come and ask you, or they would ask their other groups. So there was a general kind of learning process going on. But when they actually managed it, they were so gratified by the experience.
So you use a lot of experiential learning and you let your students try different possibilities so they can find, with your help and the help of their peers, the solutions that work best.
I do believe in doing. Active learning is much more meaningful for the students. It inspires them to carry on learning.
What tips would you like to share with other teachers?
A couple of things. Ask questions. Always ask questions. Ask why. Make them think. And then on a completely different tack, one thing really successful and positive in my students in terms of language teaching is using theatre in the classroom. I've found it to be incredibly motivational for kids. And if I talk to kids that I've taught years back and they're now in the final years of school, they will always say to me, oh, what I most remember about your classes is the theatre. We loved it. It was fantastic. And I think it's something that really resounds with the students because you can adapt it to so many different learners as well. Any opportunity to create a kind of theatrical situation in the class, I think, is very well received by the students.
Let's travel north to talk to Toyin Awofeso. Toyin works in an international school in Kigali, Rwanda, but when we speak, she's visiting family in Europe and she answers from Paris. Hello, Toyin. Thanks for accepting my invitation. How are you?
Hello. I'm very well, thank you.
You are a passionate Montessori teacher and you are normally based in Rwanda, right?
I work at John's International Montessori School in Kigali, Rwanda, as a Montessori lead teacher, and I've been with the school for 3 years. I teach all subjects for upper elementary classes. I teach ages from 7 to 11. It's my first experience of working with upper elementary students, that age group. What I enjoy most about them is that freedom that they know what they want. I see a lot of creativity, a lot of asking questions, wanting to know their rights, wanting to push for their rights. And I appreciate that about them.
How do you approach teaching and learning? How does deep learning happen?
When you enter a Montessori classroom, it seems as if there's no teacher in the classroom because of the autonomy given to the children. Meanwhile, Montessori teachers do a lot. As a Montessori teacher, you would have to plan for every child before you get to the classroom. With the planning, we are very flexible because it's one thing to plan, it's another thing to get to the classroom and meet something else because we are working with life. We are working with impressionable students, people. We are highly adaptable, and that's what Montessori calls following the child. Today, our students are born into the age of technology, so they know a lot more than we do know as teachers. And learning is such that now anybody could go online if you have access to the internet and teach yourself whatever concept you need to learn, whatever skills you want to acquire. So I get to the classroom, I present my lessons, and I begin to observe which child will need a follow-up presentation, which child will need another approach, which child would I need to reteach that same concept.
How do you give students autonomy while guiding their learning?
There was a time I introduced a math lesson on fractions. I was meant to use a Montessori materials, but I understood my children to know all the basic information, prerequisite knowledge for that particular concept. I introduced the concept using abstract numbers right away instead of starting with concrete materials. So I could see the students just nodding along the way, but their responses to questions were kind of hesitant. At the end of the lesson, a student raised his hand and said, "Oh, Miss Toyin, I don't get it." Then another student echoed the same thing. That's when I realized I had to go back and reteach the lesson using concrete materials, because children at that age, they learn from concrete to abstract, for simple to complex.
The conditions that you as a teacher create for learning can have an important impact.
I don't limit myself with the knowledge of Montessori. I learn about UDL, Universal Design for Learning, which is really helping me very much with my Montessori background. Because now, every time I'm planning a lesson, I look at my children and begin to see what barriers are there. When students are not getting concept, we're like, oh, it's because the child is not listening. Oh, it's because there's no focus. The child is not doing a lot more work on that particular concept. But if we step back and look at the situation in the classroom, what is the reason for lack of focus? Maybe it is the layout of the classroom environment, or it is because of lack of some resources.
How do you design your classroom tasks? Can you give us an example?
There are times I look at my students and I'm like, okay, now for this lesson, you're going to be the teachers. I'm just going to observe. Here are the materials you are working with. I need you to decode what this concept is about. So it's a collaborative kind of learning. I give them guidelines. So I want my student to decide, given all the items I've listed. And most of the time, if they concentrate well enough, they come out with even more than the questions I raise for them. At times when we're having social studies topics, I give them opportunity to go do research. They come back with PowerPoint presentations and they wow me a lot. You see them distribute roles amongst themselves. They do the research work, they put together in PowerPoint presentation. At times, all I needed to do is just when they bring to me, okay, do you need my suggestion when you are doing this? And who are your audience? They go back to rewrite and restructure their project findings. By the time they come out with a final output, you will think that these elementary students are in high school presenting a kind of thesis. Having them to discover the concept you are trying to teach them makes the memory everlasting for them. It's deep. You know, that aha moment, they get to experience it. Oh, we got it, Miss Toyin. This is what you are looking for. At time I'm teaching, I get stuck. And I'm like, I don't even know the answer to this question, even though I have it in my notes. Oh, let's go and find it out. Give us 10 minutes. Give us 5 minutes. They go look for it and we come back, we converge again, and they provide the answers. For me as a teacher, it's interesting. I learn from them every day, even as much as they learn from me.
Thanks, Tayin. Before we finish, would you like to share any tips with other teachers?
Teaching is a journey, not a destination. So we have to be patient with ourselves. We have to be patient with our students. And first thing, build relationships with your students. Students learn best from teachers they trust. You have to build a trustworthy relationship with your students. And we have to be what I call FFF. We have to be firm. We have to be friendly. And we have to be flexible. You have to know how to adapt and how to innovate. And above all, we have to keep learning. The students we have in our classes nowadays, they are very smart and education is evolving. And as teachers, importantly, You must enjoy the process. You must have passion for what you do. When you create a joyful learning environment, students thrive, and so do we.
Thanks to all our guests for their insights today. Katherine and Tojin give autonomy to their students to enhance their engagement and understanding. The productive failure approach that Manu Kapur shared with us can guide teachers who want to design tasks that lead to deep learning. Allowing students to initially struggle with tasks can deepen their understanding when they later encounter the correct solutions. This approach is productive failure. If students know what the teacher expects, they can explore and problem solve before direct instruction. This prepares learners to grasp concepts more thoroughly during instruction. Teachers can dig deeper into how to design classroom tasks with productive failure in Manu's new book. I will put information about the book in the show notes. Not everyone will have access to the book, but there is a downloadable PDF chapter, as Manu explains.
So I have written a chapter for educators. It's a PDF document written for any teacher with examples and of the principles that I talked about. So people who can't buy the book, they can just read the chapter.
Thanks so much for listening to another episode of Teachers' Voices. If you want to learn more about the guests, you will find more information in the show notes, and you can also engage with us in conversations and discuss these and other topics in our WhatsApp group, so please join us. Please don't forget to put a review if you've liked this episode and share with your friends and networks.